Boy Scouts of America changing their name after more than 100 years of history. The organisation is now going to allow girls to join it. The word boy said to be dropped. Good idea or bad? Let's talk to political activist Kate Smith, and also legal and media analyst Lionel. Hi, guys. Thanks for your time today. Let's chat about this for a few minutes. I'm going to throw you this bone first, if I may, Lionel. It's political correctness gone mad. Surely Boy Scouts are for boys and Girl Scouts are for girls, or should it be that way?
This is one of the most insane moments in the history of the human species. There is not anyone, other than a few, I guess, theoretical academicians, perhaps, or some SJW or somebody who thinks this is a good idea. This is insane. And by the way, Scouts, BSA, what do you think the BSA is? It's like here in the States, KFC. We know what it is. This goes to show you how there is an absolute determined effort to destroy whatever was left of this thing called gender. It's now considered almost like racist or inappropriate to do anything to distinguish boys from girls.
Okay.
And it is over with. This is the most stupid thing I've heard in I don't know how long, but I'm sure it'll be topped very shortly.
I don't think you think the same way about this, Kate Smurthwaite. What's your view? Good idea or bad? People should be made to feel comfortable. If they want to join it, why not?
Well, it's a really interesting situation. Actually, if you look at the kind of science of it, where do young people do best? It turns out, perhaps surprisingly, perhaps unsurprisingly, that girls seem to thrive better in single-sex environments for things like that, but boys actually seem to thrive better in mixed environments. It seems like having some girls join in maybe takes away some of the sort of laddie culture, if you like. It's not entirely clear why these things are true. Personally, I think there's a lot to be said for giving girls a kind of space of their own. We know that there are differences in the kind of, for example, the kind of role models that boys and girls are exposed to. So when we do get mixed gender groups, what can often happen is that the boys have more confidence, they've been brought up on action heroes, and the girls can get sidelined a bit. So I guess I have a lot of sympathy with the Girl Scouts organisation who are saying, hey, you know, this has worked well for us in the past. I mean, what I don't want, of course, is, you know, for the Girl Scouts all to do sewing and knitting and the boys to get to climb mountains. I mean, I think that is very much an outdated construct. I think we all know that there are plenty of girls who'd like to climb mountains. But for me, I'm not sure that the perfect solution is just to put them in the boys' club. I think what we should be doing, yeah, of course, ultimately, is working towards a culture, you know, where we don't need to separate groups. But in the meantime, I think there's absolutely nothing wrong with giving the girls their own space, you know, and making sure that they have a chance to thrive and they have a chance to be the leaders of that, rather than putting them in a mixed group where they're at risk of being, you know, treated as a secondary group within that.
So what about the boys, as Lionel's saying?
What about the boys?
Well,
now, I
as
don't
I'm saying,
this. First of all, if girls are good...
Sorry, I can answer your question, Lionel, if you let me talk. The research suggests that actually boys do better in mixed groups. You've been talking for 5 minutes! And girls do better. That's just what... You asked me a question and then you wanted me to answer it, so I was answering your question. The research says boys do better.
No, I didn't ask you a question.
But of course,
it was a rhetorical question.
It
was my time to speak.
All right, Lionel, look.
Now, let me ask you this question.
Go on, chuck your toys out of the pram, Lionel. Everybody's listening.
Lionel, why don't we just amalgamate, have one great big scout group for the boys and the girls? What would be wrong with that idea?
Now, let me get this straight. Apparently, according to this scientific study, which you just made up on the fly, girls do better sometimes among girls, but boys do better. Are you going to let me finish? Are you going to let me finish? Boys do better, apparently, with girls, but girls do better with girls.
People can Google this.
So who are the girls who are going to have to be... She's doing it again. Go ahead, doctor. Go ahead.
I think it's a sound delay, Lionel. Let's just bring this back in and not be quite so heated about it. What is wrong with the idea? I mean, schools in the US, they don't segregate boys and girls. So, you know, isn't this the way forward, that maybe everyone should be coming together?
I think there's
the point that's being missed here in the States. Well, let me just say something. The reason why is that the enrollment here is dwindling, because one of the biggest problems are that kids who are so, I guess, either because of their ADHD medication or fixated on this don't really see the need to be joining any groups with any people, outdoors or otherwise. So that's the biggest problem. Girl Scouts here in the States are doing much better, primarily because of their cookies. Boy Scouts are trying to do something to stay ahead. But what you're seeing is the wussification of just boys and girls and how we are just turning them into just these I don't know, these hominids or these kids who don't play, who don't enjoy doing things like I did, like we did, being a boy and roughhousing. I don't understand it. To do stuff that the Scouts used to do, to go out into the woods. Remember what Lord Baden-Powell did? Remember the source, the initial source of the Scouts going out and actually using his work in warfare, of all things, to go out and do things which are perhaps, dare I say, hyper-masculine? That's all been diluted. That's over with.
The Girl Scouts...
Yeah,
The Girl Scouts, you were kind of praising it just now that they had this stance. They're kind of a bit more conservative. Yeah, they say they don't have any gender policies, but yeah, there's a bit of a frosty relationship now. They don't like the Boy Scouts dropping the name boy. Is it the fact that, you know, who's right here? Is it the Boy Scouts or the Girl Scouts? Should the Girl Scouts simply move with the times?
Well, I think that the Girl Scouts have a good point in that it really seems like it's almost a turf war in that they're kind of saying, well, you know, we're going to let the boys in, you know, we're going to let the girls in order to boost our numbers. But I'm kind of concerned with Lionel's idea that it's somehow great to encourage boys to fight and be super rough and super violent with each other. I think that this is 2018 and the idea that it's somehow good for young men to be thrown into some sort of boxing ring. I think that we should offer young people, boys and girls, a whole range of activities, and there are definitely arguments in favour of allowing them to do some of those activities in a single-sex environment, and there are definitely arguments in favour of allowing them to do at least some of those activities in a mixed environment.
The Scouts are outdated,
and I think that what sometimes happens
is
that when you've got a mixed group, sometimes the girls are trying to get their point across, and they can be loudly shouted down by the boys, which I don't know if you've seen any recent examples of that, but it feels a little bit like maybe that's happening right now.
Lionel, this whole Scout thing, boys and girls, is just outdated anyway.
Would we stop it? Look, this is the most ridiculous thing. There was a time, and I will tell you this, and I don't know about the rest of the world, but I can go anywhere in this country, and most people think that this is absurd. There's a problem. It's not just boys and girls. Kids aren't allowed to be kids anymore. We're playing it so safe. We've got helmets. There was a time when if you were a red-blooded American male,
let's not have helmets. Let's just have kids with brain damage.
And climb trees. And it was fun. And there was nothing wrong with it. But now we're going to just reduce these little boys to sit around and... This is horrible. This is called a gender nullification. Look, it's all a part of this complete and total ridiculous idea that people are afraid that there are genders and that boys like to do boy stuff and that girls like to do girl stuff.
Girls joining the Boy Scouts if they wanted. Do you have a problem with that?
That there isn't a great deal of evidence to suggest that only boys want to do traditionally male activities and only girls want to do traditionally female activities.
Yes, there is.
It's very, very obvious that there are lots of girls who like climbing trees and there are lots of boys that like baking cakes. And to try to say to young people, you have to only do this. What we should, of course, do is give them a range of activities and let them choose and actually encourage them to try new stuff, because that's what the whole point of childhood is to try stuff out.
That's not what this is about, and you know it.
What about children?
What it seems to be about is you randomly shouting at me when you haven't really got a point, Lionel.
Guys, what about children that have come from maybe traditional religious families? What about children that have come from traditional...
Sorry, I can't hear your question, Kevin.
Yeah, I'm trying, don't worry. What about children that come from traditional religious families and they don't want their kids to go to kind of unisex Boy Scouts, unisex Girl Scouts? They've got a point as well, haven't they?
Well, I think that's a very, very interesting point there, Kevin. On the one hand, I'm absolutely against, you know, religious organisations that operate a sort of full-on gender apartheid. I think that's absolutely not OK. At the same time, we have to accept there are communities where that is kind of the norm.
What are you going to do about it?
And it's very difficult if we close down these, you know, female-only spaces, rather than encouraging people to join the mixed spaces. What can happen instead is that then girls from those communities end up not being allowed to go out and take take part in these activities at all. So I think we have to be very careful in encouraging, you know, people to be happy mixing and people to be happy hanging around with a whole range of different people without ending up with people from minority communities, you know, being stuck at home.
Guys, we'll leave it on that positive thought. Political activist Kate Smurthwaite, legal and media analyst Lionel. I bet you were never in the Scouts, Lionel, or were you? You can tell me off air. Thanks, guys. Good night.